Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Clara. I am the Marketing and Communication Manager here at Beekast. And today I'm really happy to kind of present to you this new webinar where we're going to discuss all the key features of Beekast to enhance your training sessions. All right, so I'm just going to let everyone join us, kind of get to know everyone. Hi. Hello, everyone. All right, perfect. Just for your information, I will be available in the Livestorm live chat, so I'll be checking into that along the way just to see if you have any questions or comments, and we'll be able to go over that together. So feel free to chat with me in the Livestorm chat, and just making sure that everyone can hear and see me. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So let's get started. And the first thing that I wanted to share with you today was kind of an overview of what we'll be talking about. So the idea is really to go over the evaluation activities for people who may not know about them yet, who may not be familiar with these activities. We're also going to talk about two key aspects of any training course, which is the introduction and the conclusion. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. And once we've gotten kind of this basic Beekast training part out of the way, we'll go into the really fun stuff, which is the best practices and tips that I have to share with you today. And I think you'll be really excited by these because these are some hidden features and tips that most users don't really know about. So it'll be really fun to share these with you and allow you to kind of build even better training courses in Beekast. All right, so getting started, let's just dive in and talk about these very famous evaluation activities. So I don't know if everyone already knows about this. I mean, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Beekast does offer around 15 interactive activities to engage your participants throughout your presentation, whether it's a meeting, a training session, or an event. And we have a library of activities that you can introduce throughout your sessions. So most of you may be already familiar with our word cloud, our surveys, our polls. We have a lot of activities that really allow you to kind of engage your audience throughout any type of interaction. But what's really interesting with Beekast is that we also have a set of activities called evaluation activities, or some of you may know them under the name of assessment activities. Now, these types of activities, what makes them different from our other activities is that they have a correct and an incorrect answer. So the goal here is really to assess your learners' knowledge and test their understanding in order to make them ideal for training sessions. So these are activities that are just great for all of you trainers, coaches, facilitators out there, because in these activities, whereas in the word cloud, we're just kind of polling people. We want to get their opinion. We want to generate some insights and just share ideas. So there isn't really a right and wrong answer when you're launching a word cloud, when you're launching a survey. On the other hand, when you're launching an MCQ or a ranking activity, you are going to be testing your audience's knowledge on a certain topic. And that activity will result in a right or wrong answer. And so that's really the main difference. And the 5 activities that I'm showing you today on my screen is the MCQ, which is, your general classic quiz, which I think everyone kind of already knows. But then we also offer the ranking activity here. Your audience is going to put elements back in the right order. So this is great if you're trying to test your audience on regarding maybe topics like putting things back in order, like a process. We use this in onboarding and helping users learn how to use Beekast. It's really interesting to make sure that, for example, everyone knows the right order to create a Beekast session. So the ranking activity we can be really cool here. And then we have the challenge activity, which allows you to gamify your training sessions. For example, the challenge is a lot like the MCQ, except instead of just having one MCQ, the challenge allows you to create multiple MCQs, and then people have to go through each of these MCQs as quickly and as accurately as possible. And then you'll get a little podium. So the setup is feels a lot more competitive, and it really kind of helps engage your audience and bring back a little bit of that fun and kind of competitive mode in Beekast. And then our two most recent activities that are assessment activities are the association and pin on image. Now, association is basically just challenging your audience to make associations between different elements. These can be different pictures. So for example, you could imagine showing like multiple pictures of different cities, and then your audience has to match the city with the name of the city. So they have to find like which picture represents Paris, which picture represents London, etc. And then we have the pin on image. This is just a really visual way of evaluating or surveying your audience. And on pin on image, you're showing an image, and people will be able to drag and drop a little pin in order to identify specific elements of that image. So just very different types of activities here that you can use. And I just wanted to show you very quickly on an MCQ what also makes the difference between a normal Beekast activity and a evaluation activity, and that is the score. So we have this extra element, and let me just share with you. Here we are. So welcome to the backstage of a Beekast session. You're now in my facilitator screen. So this is what I see while I'm showing you all of the slides. And I just wanted to show you this MCQ activity. So for example, this would be an MCQ where we want to find out if our audience is familiar with the Beekast Academy. And what you'll see whenever you create a evaluation activity is this element right here. When you're creating a word cloud, a survey, any type of normal Beekast activity, you will not have this little element here. This is really only in evaluation activities, and it is the score. So you can link any type of evaluation activity to a score. So when your audience gets the right answer, they will be able to get, for example, here 3 points. And that's just a great way throughout your training course, your training session, to kind of make sure that your audience is assimilating everything that you're giving them, that they understand. You're testing their knowledge, their comprehension on a certain topic, on a given topic. And with the score, you can really easily see like, oh, okay, half of my audience got 3 out of 3 here, and then maybe 2 or 3 members, 2 or 3 learners only got 0, so they didn't score any points on this activity. So maybe we have some roadblocks here. Maybe there's some people found it hard to understand, and this may be a time for you to say, okay, I need to go back on this activity and maybe make sure that everything is clear and comprehensive before moving on to the next part of my training session. So make sure to use these scores depending on the type of activity that you're creating, and here we'll just set it to 2 points. And so I can go ahead and save my activity. And then whenever I launch it, I get my little countdown. And I'll just show you what this looks like from the participants view. So here I'm on the take part. So this is what my participants see. And as you can see, they will be able to select multiple answers. And so just as a reminder, on our Beekast Academy, you will be able to get certification courses, you get tutorials. We don't have articles to become a public speaker yet, but that will be coming shortly. Things like that. Let's just imagine that I click on submit. As you can see, I did get an incorrect answer, and that's for the PDF exactly. And so what's great here is that you even get a little explanation if you need, but I can now see as the facilitator, as the coach, the trainer, that someone did get something incorrect. And so I can go back on this with them to provide further explanation. So this is just a great way to use evaluation activities in Beekast, and I highly recommend that you try these evaluation activities because they provide so many great insights for trainers in a Beekast session. All right, moving on, and I'm going to switch you back right here to this screen. Perfect. This is my projection screen. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. But let's talk about the introduction. All right, so I think that everyone already kind of knows about this, but the introduction is definitely a crucial moment to really engage participants and clarify the training goals and your learners' expectations. So what we recommend doing with Beekast whenever we're setting up an introduction for a training course is starting with an icebreakers to really kind of gauge learners' knowledge and capture their attention with a fun activity. So for me, the idea here of an icebreaker when you're starting off a training course isn't to really dive into all of the theoretical and very technical aspect of the training course, but it's actually a way for you to engage your learners, but it's also a way for your learners, your audience, to share with you what are their expectations, what would they like to know, what are they hoping to learn throughout this course. And so you could use a quick MCQ to evaluate their level, or something like that. You could definitely use an evaluation activity. But what I wanted to recommend with you here was a much simpler icebreaker that I really like, which is called the I Know, I Wonder. And let me show you what this looks like right here. So here you, have the I Know, I Wonder. Let me see where it is. Perfect, here it is. So in the I Know, I Wonder, this is an icebreaker that exists as a template in Beekast. So you can actually just import this template and then launch it with your audience. You don't have to start from scratch or create anything yourself. So it's a pretty good time saver. And what's great about this icebreaker is it's a way for you to just ask your audience immediately what they know regarding the topic of the training course today and what they are wondering. So here, for example, let me show you, just activating my pointer. Okay, so here I have my topic, I have my question. So today the training course would be about creating training courses on Beekast. That's what our webinar is all about. And I could ask you at the beginning of this webinar, okay, what do you know about creating training courses on Beekast? And what are you interested in? What are you wondering? What don't you know about it? And this would be a great way for me as a trainer to really understand, okay, so for example, here today, I'm with a group of people who already know about evaluation activities and they already kind of know about icebreakers. So maybe even if I had planned on showing this in my training course, maybe once I get this feedback at the beginning of my course, I can kind of adjust it in order to not go over things and lose time on topics that already feel very familiar and that apparently are already understood by my audience. So these are things where I feel like my audience would be a little bored or would actually not be that engaged at the beginning of my training course if I went back and spent 20 minutes on icebreakers when actually my audience already is familiar with icebreakers. On the other hand, what I could do is maybe I didn't think about in my training course, maybe I haven't thought about how showing people how they can track their learners' progress in Beekast. Now, rest assured, I have. This is just an example. We will be seeing that as well. But the I Wonder category is actually a great way for you as a trainer or as a coach to get some insights and tell yourself, okay, this is interesting because this is what people are coming here for. This is why they're here in my training course and what they're hoping to get out of it. And so if once I have this information, it's great to be able to kind of incorporate it into my training session, or at least to let my audience know that these are topics that we will be talking about further on in the training course. So Once again, I really like this icebreaker because I think it allows you to get a lot of insights on what people are hoping to get out of your training course. So you're getting a lot of value as a trainer and as a coach, for example, as a facilitator, but your audience is also getting a lot of value as well because they're being engaged. We're asking them what they want to see. We're helping them kind of structure the training course so they feel like more um, they feel like active participants in your training course. And it's also a way to make sure that to reassure them and let them know that these are elements that you will be seeing. So you're making sure that they'll stay engaged throughout the training course because they'll be waiting to get answers to their questions. Let me know if you knew about this activity. It's brand new. It's a template that came out about a couple weeks ago. So we're always interested in seeing if this was something that some of our trainers, coaches, facilitators already use or not. All right. Moving on, it would be impossible for me to talk about the introduction aspect of a training course without talking about the conclusion. So, of course, it's as important as the introduction. And in training, structured wrap ups are essential. So, I like to not just talk about a conclusion. Here, as you can see, I talk about closing a training course, I talk about debriefing. Wrap ups, because for me, a conclusion feels very final. And I think in a training course, as trainers and facilitators, we don't want to just end on one note. With the end of a training course should never just be getting feedback, or it should never just be showing everyone like, okay, so here's a quick reminder of everything that we saw in the past 4 hours, for example. On the other hand, I think it's important to have all of these elements and to consolidate what was learned and get feedback to ensure training objectives are met. So the wrap up is not just the end of your training course, but a time to refocus learners with a final exercise in order to gather their feedback and re-engage them one last time in this training course. So don't think of it as one final task, but as multiple little tasks that are allowing you to finish your training course in the best and most optimized way possible. So a favorite wrap-up activity of mine is the blob tree. And I know that a lot of our trainers love this activity. So let me just share with you what this looks like. Here we go. All right, it should be appearing anytime now. I have a little bit of a slow Wi-Fi today, so you'll have to excuse me. There we go, perfect. All right, so for those of you who are not familiar with the blob tree, this is a really fun activity that some people use as an icebreaker, but I really like using it as a kind of conclusion, I'll use the word, for a training course. Basically, the idea here is you're going to ask your learners, your audience, a question. And then your audience are going to be able to come and position themselves on one of these characters that you can see here. So in Beekast, we offer a lot of different little sceneries and scenarios. So here we have the beach, but you could also choose, we have the school, we have a bike race, we have a building. There are just a lot of different sceneries possible in order to kind of mix it up and generate new types of blob trees. But in this one, what we can see, and I've already kind of created an example for you here. So what we can see here is, for example, this character, Clara, so that would be me, how she feels at the end of this training course. We can see this little character here that is swimming. They're confident, quick. They actually kind of look like they're about to go save the character right here. That's kind of drowning. So I would, as a trainer, understand that Clara feels actually very confident. She's learned everything that she needs. She feels confident, and she can perhaps even go help other learners at the end of this training course. On the other hand, if I go here, I can see that Charlie, we have a character that looks a little frustrated, I would say even mad. So of course, as a trainer, you can go ahead and kind of look at all of these dots and kind of find where your audience is positioning themselves. If you have a lot of people positioning themselves around these happy characters, these characters that feel really relaxed, these characters that are actively playing, that's great. But sometimes you may also have a lot of people that show you characters that are drowning or that are frustrated or that are completely lost. And that's also a great time to kind of go back and ask questions, reach out to these audience members and say, okay, well, Charlie, I see that you look a little frustrated. What's going on? And in that way, you're not just ending your training session by asking for feedback and just leaving it there. The feedback that you're getting is actually a great way to kind of engage with your audience and make sure that nobody leaves your training course frustrated or confused or missing out on any of the valuable information that you've given them along the way. So this blob tree is really great. I like it because instead of using words, we're using images, we're using visual interpretations. And I think that that's really great for people because sometimes we don't want to put a word on how we're feeling. This just allows us to kind of find a character that feels the way we feel or that looks the way we feel. So this is really great. I recommend using this for any type of debriefing or kind of closing activities in order to finish your training session off well. All right, moving on. Now that we've seen these kind of first steps, invaluable best practices for Beekast, I want to share with you some really big tips and best practices as well. But just these kind of these features that most of our users don't know about or don't use as much as what I think they would if they knew about this feature. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the import from a session feature. And I'm just going to make sure that there are no questions, just checking very quickly on the Livestorm chat. But I see that everyone looks okay. Okay, perfect. All right. So let's talk about the import from a session feature. Now, trainers often use the same content for different groups, or they'll run different sessions, but will reuse activities or content they have previously used. So to save time, what we recommend is clicking on the add a slide, and instead of starting from scratch and when you're creating a Beekast session, having to add a slide, create an activity, add your content, you can actually click on import from a session. And this allows you to select slides and activities from previous sessions, importing existing content instead of starting from scratch. Now, this import feature is going to save you so much time, and it really helps you build a library of training content to reuse as needed. And I really like this little line that on this slide right here, because I think it's so true when it comes to using Beekast actively and how you can get the most out of Beekast in terms of value. And that it's what you see right here, where basically the more you use Beekast, the more content you'll have. And then the more time you'll save when creating new training sessions. So remember, this import feature is basically kind of helping you create a virtuous circle in Beekast where you're turning each session into a foundation for the next one. And you can easily reuse the information you need and kind of pick and choose the activities or the content that you want to find in your next training session. So let me show you very quickly how this works. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring you back to my side of the session. So here, if I was a trainer and I wanted to save time, I would go ahead and click on add a slide right here. And as you can see, I'm right now in new slide. So this is where I would create content for the first time. I then have my templates, which allows me to save time because I can just go ahead and import templates that Beekast creates and provides. So I could have closing activities. This is where you would find the blob tree, some of the icebreakers that I've already shared with you today. But what I'm interested is the import from session. So if I go ahead and click on import from session, what you'll see is I have all of my sessions that are loading, and I can go ahead and pick and choose any type of activity or content or slide and just bring that over to this current session. So for example, if I wanted to if I wanted to go on performance review, I could go ahead and say, oh, actually, this pin on image icebreaker is really fun. And it would take me so long to recreate this icebreaker that I've already created from scratch once. It's actually not a template or anything like that. I've created it by myself. And I don't want to have to recreate it every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply import it from my previous session. And I can click multiple. As you can see, I can do a multiple selection. So if I wanted to bring in these 3 activities in my current session, I could. Here, I'm just interested in bringing in the pin on image. So I can go ahead and click on import. And as you can see, this will be automatically added right here. And if I start the activity, everything is already good to go. So this is just a great way to save time and reuse content. And once again, the more content you'll have, the more time you'll save, because you really have just a library of content waiting for you, and you're just generating more and more value and content for your upcoming training sessions. All right. Highly recommend doing this little pin on image activity. It's pretty fun as well if you're looking for an icebreaker. So definitely the import from session is something that I recommend. It's something that a lot of our users are starting to do, but it's still something that I feel people don't realize yet how much time it saves. And it's such a fun feature for people that create content, because we're actually kind of giving it back to you and letting you reuse it. Just a quick reminder though, when you do import an activity in from another session, the session results will not be imported in your current session. So here, as you can see, I don't have the results from the people in my previous session. Now that this is a new activity in my session, I will have to relaunch it. I don't have any of the past results or anything like that. So it starts the results are kind of start from 0 once again. So just keep that in mind. This does not allow you to kind of bring over results into another session. All right, perfect. And now I'm actually going to stay in this preview that I'm showing you on my screen. I'm not going to go back to the projection screen and just show you the slides, because we're going to talk about team creation in Beekast. So I know that a lot of our trainers and coaches are always looking for ways to make their training sessions, their courses, a lot more interactive and playful. And I think that the team creation is a feature that, once again, a lot of our users don't really know much about. And so I wanted to kind of go through this with you and show you exactly what this looks like. So in session settings, and I'm going to show you right here, if I go here on my session settings, you have multiple ways to set up your session. And one thing that I actively think is a great way to bring in interaction and a competitive element in your training session is by creating a team. So this will allow participants to join teams at the start of a Beekast session. And once again, it really adds a more competitive and playful element, which can be really useful in training sessions. So what you would do is you would go and click on the teams right here. And as you can see, you can go ahead and create teams of participants that will compete with each other throughout your session activities. So what they mean by the challenge type is that the teams can only play against each other in evaluation type activities. So if you want to launch any one of the 5 evaluation activities that I showed you today, then this teams could actually play in these activities, whereas your teams will not be able to win points if they participate in a non-evaluation activity like a word cloud or a survey, for example, which is pretty normal because there are no scores or points to be earned in those types of activities. So here they will be earning points for their team. And just a quick reminder, this is pretty important. When you create a team, participants will be asked to join a team upon joining the session. So there is no way to automatically define which person will be assigned to which team in Beekast. So as a trainer, keep that in mind and make sure that you are very clear when you are explaining this to your audience, because you want to make sure that your teams are have an equal amount of people. So for example, if I were to create a blue team, I could go ahead and create this here and then add an orange team. I'm not changing the colors, but if I wanted to have the red team, I could definitely just have the red team, for example. Here, let's stick to blue and orange. And then if I were to click on save, when joining the session, immediately it will say, what team would you like to join, blue team or orange team? And the participant will be able to choose the team that they join. So maybe a good way here to make sure that your teams have an equal amount of people on each of them is just to send out a little list and telling people, okay, so during this training session, we will have teams in Beekast, and you will be playing for a specific team. On list A will be team A, and on this list of names will be team B, and that way people will know in advance what team they should be joining when they join the Beekast session. All right. So of course, and just this is also a quick reminder, because we do get this question a lot and I can see it pop up in the Livestorm chat, which is that team scores will be an average of its members' scores. So yeah, it is an average and not a sum or anything like that. So you are playing on an average in terms of scores. And final little reminder that I am sharing with you, I believe in this slide, is that you can display the team podium to observe performance as a trainer. And I'm going to show you this right now with the projection screen. So let's talk a little bit more about the projection screen. In Beekast, the projection screen allows you to display and share your content more clearly and I would say attractively to your participants. So when you activate the projection screen in Beekast, it will automatically open a new tab. And this tab is the one that I've been showing you today in this webinar. So here, I have, for example, two screens in front of me. I have my computer screen, my laptop screen, and then I have an other screen that I can kind of play around with. So what's great for this when you're a trainer and you have maybe your computer and a projection screen in the back of you, if you're doing in-person training courses or if you're doing online training courses, is that you can go ahead and just share a tab instead of sharing your entire screen. And that way, as you can see here, what I'm projecting you today right now is my screen as the facilitator, where I can handle everything. I can go ahead and check if there are any messages. I can change any types of settings that I want. I can go ahead and check my results. So kind of go see, okay, who participated in my board activity, things like that. So these are elements that I don't want to always show my participants, right? As trainers, we don't want our participants to be looking at all of the results and things like that. So what I encourage you to do is to go ahead and click on this present right here, this present button. And what will happen when I click on this button is it will open this tab right here. And this tab is your projection screen. And what's great about the projection screen is that it will give you access to some extra features that really help you have even better training courses. So for example, it gives you access to the pointer that you can enable or disable. So I've been using this today to kind of focus your attention on specific points that I want to show to you. I can also go ahead and access the leaderboards. Now the leaderboards, there's not much to show you today because I'm on this session by myself, and I just added one person, our famous Charlie, who participated. But let me try very quickly to just see if I can get you a quick little score right here. Yeah, because since I got it wrong on the MCQ, you're not seeing any scores pop up. But the idea here with the leaderboard is when you have a lot of participants, it's a great way to kind of show people where they're at in terms of their points. So for evaluation activities, and I can actually show you this I know how I'm going to show you this. Here we go. This is an example of a leaderboard that's a lot more interesting. So as you can see here, Damien got 6 points. So they got all of the right answers compared to some of my other participants here. For example, I'm looking at Virginie or Laure or Marion, who only got about 1 point. So this already allows me to kind of get a ranking and see, wow, who are the people who are really going through this training course, getting all of the right answers. But just keep in mind that in Beekast, we have our scores and we have our Bs. And this is a participation leaderboard that's also made available to you. And in your participation leaderboard, we count Bs, and Bs are actually points that you can earn in Beekast when you are an active participant. So you get Bs by joining in on activities, but not necessarily by getting the right answer. You can get the wrong answer. If you join the activity, you will still be getting 10 Bs because you are actively participating in this session. You're trying. You also get Bs if you comment, if you add ideas, if you generate ideas in a Beekast session, for example, in a board activity. The more ideas you share, the more you will be getting Bs. So here, what's interesting to see is that even though Virginie Lopez is actually somebody who may not have gotten the best score, she's actually one of our most active participants. So as a trainer, as a facilitator, this is interesting for me because this means that Virginia is not completely lost. She isn't disengaged from my training course. On the contrary, she is doing her best to be actively participating and engaging in my training course. So this is something that is made available to you in the Beekast projection screen, and I really recommend you kind of activate it and share it with people because it's a great way to also gamify your training session. Kind of feels more like a competition. And another quick reminder here, because as you can see, Damien got 6 points, but so did Lawrence and so did Marion. And so what this means is that when we calculate the right and wrong answers in Beekast, you get points for scoring the right answer, but you also get a better ranking the faster you respond. So here we can imagine that Damien actually not only got the right answer, but was actually the fastest to answer as well. So he was the most reactive, and then Lawrence and Marion were just a tad bit slower when providing their answer. All right, switching back over here. And something else that I wanted to share with you that I think is really great as well. And this is going out to all of those trainers who sometimes work in really big classrooms or with a really large audience in person and may have some people who find it very difficult to see the board, for example, the projection screen. Let's imagine this is your projection screen, and let's imagine that during this activity, you have members of your audience who are having a hard time seeing this. Now, most of the time, you're projecting your screen, and members of the audience have they're on their phones, so they can see. They're on the Beekast session on their phones or on the Beekast session on their computers, so they can see. But sometimes people will be looking towards the screen, the screen that you're projecting, this screen right here, and it can be hard for them to read. So what you can also do here is go to the settings of your projection screen at the top right corner of your screen. And if you click here, you'll be able to zoom in on your session. So this is really, really great because as you can see, immediately my session is so much easier to read, and it just makes it a lot more accessible for people in the back row who may have a hard time seeing your screen. So make sure to look into these settings because you have a lot of tools that make it easier for your audience to follow along. And the final one I wanted to share with you was the QR code. So you have multiple ways of joining a Beekast session and sharing your Beekast session with your audience. And one of those ways is projecting a QR code. And we do have a specific slide that can be generated in Beekast that allows you to do this. But usually that slide, the QR code can be pretty small. So if you're in a really big room, or if people are having a hard time getting the QR code, scanning the QR code on their phone, using the projection screen and projecting the QR code in this really large format is actually a great way to make sure that everyone can go ahead and scan the QR code. And you can do this at any given time of your Beekast session. So you can do this beginning, middle, and end whenever you'd like, just to let people join in on the Beekast session. All right, that's all I wanted to show to you right now when it comes to the projection screen. We're now going to move along and talk a little bit more about the tabs part. So the tabs feature is also a feature that is actually really used a lot in Beekast. Our users like this feature because it gives them access to a lot of different possibilities in terms of sharing information and resources. So let me show you what this looks like right here. Welcome back to my side of Beekast. And basically this, just like the slide says, the tabs element allows you to share information with your participants in a single space. So you'll be able to share documents, videos, agendas, web pages, lists, anything that you'd like, PDF documents, things like that. And your participants will be able to access these resources at any given time during the course. Now, one of the tips and hacks that I wanted to share with you is when you're a facilitator and you want to go into your tabs, here you can see that this is something that all of your participants can see. File sharing. So when your participants go into the tabs section of your Beekast session, they will be able to click and they will be able to download the content that I'm sharing with you today, which is the webinar presentation in a PDF format. So if you want to get all of the slides that I'm sharing with you today, you can go ahead and click here and it will automatically download the slides for you. Now, this is something that I have made visible to my participants, but as a facilitator, I have the ability to make certain tabs invisible to my participants. So if I were to click here, as you can see, this now is something that will no longer appear for my participants. So if you had, for example, the all of the answers to a specific quiz, or if you had a training course that you wanted, in any type of resource that you wanted to share at the end of your training course or along the way, these are resources that you don't want to unravel and show at the beginning of your course, then you could go ahead and make this invisible, make these tabs invisible for your participants. And when the right time comes, you could go ahead and say, oh, by the way, I've just shared with you this document that will allow you to go further into what I'm sharing with you. And that way, your audience remains focused on what you're sharing with them. They're not trying to find extra resources, kind of doing things on their own while you're presenting your training and your training resources or any part of your training course. And a little hack that I wanted to share with you that I really like is a lot of our users think of this as really sharing with their audience, but some of these tabs can remain just for you the entire time. And this is what I did with my notes. Basically, I added a information tab. And in this information tab, I just added my notes. So I could imagine as a facilitator, I would be showing you the projection screen. And on my side of things, I would just have all of my notes set up right here. And this would allow me to take notes, add notes. It would allow me to kind of write down things that I don't want to forget along the way, perhaps questions or comments that have come up during the training course. And I just think this is a great way to have all of your notes in one place. You don't need a notebook. You don't need to have another tab open on your computer and to write down anything. You could have everything directly in Beekast as a facilitator, as a trainer. And so for trainers, as you can see, I gave you a quick example. I could be like, okay, slide 4, I need to remember to talk about scoring and activity settings. Slide 5, I need to launch that MCQ to show people how it works. More notes here. I can go ahead and edit it, just add anything that I want, save it, and along the way, I just add on more and more notes. And what's great is since this is not visible to my participants, this is a resource that is only for me, and my participants don't know that I have all of my notes, all of my findings in one space, and that I'm using these along the way. So it's just a really fun hack if you're looking for ways to add your trainer notes somewhere in Beekast without having to go from one platform to the next or looking at your notebook or anything like that. We are reaching the end of this webinar. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And the last thing that I want to share with you today is boosting your training with asynchronous training. Now, this is maybe a more technical way of using Beekast, but most of the time when we have trainers that create training programs in Beekast, some of these courses can be pretty long. Some of these courses can last a whole day, up to 4 hours. And what they'll do is, because in Beekast you have a synchronous mode and an asynchronous mode, you can't really create a hybrid Beekast session where you can sometimes create, for example, asynchronous activities that your audience can do on their own time, but then bring them back to a synchronous activity afterwards and focus them on specific elements. And so this is actually something that you can do in Beekast, but just not in only one session. And it's actually great when you're trying to energize some of those long courses where people can kind of doze off. It can get a little long. There's usually a lot of theoretical findings here as well. So you're going through a lot of information. And what we recommend at Beekast is alternating between synchronous and asynchronous training moments to kind of come and energize those long courses. So basically, what you could do is you could have your synchronous session where your people are following along with you. They can't skip ahead. They can't really go back. They're following along to the course with you as the facilitator, and your participants are really following with you. And you could then create an asynchronous session with, for example, a little quiz format. And so this would allow your participants to take a quiz or to participate in an activity during your session, during your course, but just on their own time. And I think that sometimes this is a little bit like breakout rooms or things like that. These are elements that in a training course can really help kind of break up this very long format. And in order to kind of let people breathe, work on things by themselves, and then you as a trainer could just be there to provide help or information when needed. So what's interesting here when you're doing an asynchronous session in Beekast is that you do get one little hidden feature in your projection screen that I wanted to share with you. And let's see right now what this would look like. So for example, let's imagine I did an entire onboarding training course for Beekast. So you've been with me for 3 hours. We've gone through everything you need to know to host on Beekast, create sessions, create activities, set up your training course or set up your Beekast session. We've gone through all of those really big elements. And now I just want to make sure that you've understood all of this. And I want you to take a breather. I want you to take your time. I'm going to give you 45 minutes to just hop onto a session and answer a series of activities and quizzes. So let me show you what this would look like. And you'll have to excuse me today. This quiz is only in French, but if anyone wants this information in English, if anybody needs this in English, I will be happy to provide as well. But let me just show you right now. Changing my screen. All right, perfect. So here you would see, okay, let's finish up on this training course right here. And let me just see if I can. Perfect. All right, that's a quick hack as well. I can change the language for you right here. All right, so let's finish up this training session. And basically, I'm going to invite people to answer a series of questions. So for example, what are the steps to follow to create a Beekast session? So this would be one of the ranking evaluation activities that I shared with you, where people have to put the right order, where people have to put these steps back in the right order. And then you could also, when you're creating a session, you could also answer this right here. So when I create my session, I'm asked to choose the scrolling mode. This is if I want the participant scroll mode. This would be the asynchronous session. Facilitator would be synchronous. And so hybrid mode does not exist. So you get the gist. This is a asynchronous session. So all of my participants can go at their own rhythm here. Everyone can answer. They can go through the slides. They can come back. They can move forward. And as the facilitator, I'm not the one that is giving them any of the orders or anything like that. They are handling this all by themselves. I do have my little blob tree here at the end to invite people to tell me how they feel at the end of this training course. And so what's interesting and what I wanted to share with you here is, of course, I do have my leaderboard. So this was what I was showing you previously. So that's really interesting. But I also have my Beekast journey. And this is a hidden feature, I feel, for a lot of people. And as a trainer, this is so fun if you want to see where your participants are during your asynchronous training session. So you could go ahead and let everyone do their training course on their own time, but then you would be able to project this Beekast journey so that everyone kind of can see how they're moving along. And as a trainer, as a facilitator, or as a coach, this is great because I can see that, okay, everyone has gone through the 5 first Beekast activities and slides. So no one is at the beginning here, but I do still have some people that are finishing up on the last slide. I have people who are still on this board activity. And then other people are already finished. So they've gone through everything and they finished this asynchronous session and they're done with their quiz. As a trainer, this is great for me because I can see where people are. And I can also see, let's imagine that there are 2 or 3 people still stuck on this second activity. This is a moment for me to say, okay, well, let me help you. What are you struggling with? Why aren't you moving up? Things like that. So it's great in order to kind of keep an eye on where your participants are, if anyone is kind of blocked or having a hard time moving forward. And it's also, once again, for everyone out there who is looking to gamify their training programs, I think you'll be happy to see that this is also just a really fun way to kind of gamify asynchronous sessions and show people like, oh, quickly, some people are reaching towards the end of this Beekast session while some people are still here. So here you go. This is just a little hidden feature on your projection screen for asynchronous sessions. As you have seen in the projection screen that I showed you for a synchronous session, you do not have the Beekast journey. So this won't show up if you're hosting a synchronous session. All right. Moving back towards our webinar, we are now finishing up with the final slide, which is the result space. Now, of course, Beekast provides you with a lot of different access to results and a lot of different figures that allows you to measure the success of your training courses. And this is something that every trainer, every coach wants in their toolkit, is a tool that allows them to measure and track their learners' engagement rates and really be able to improve further training courses. So I've showed you, in order to access the results space, you can go ahead and click up here on results. And when you click on results, you will get access to, for example, this board activity. You even have the activity length because I had added that. So you know that people spent about a minute on this. One participant shared 4 ideas in 2 categories. So here you have a little breakdown of this. You could even moderate some of this for people who are interested. You could moderate and refuse certain ideas, but in training, this is usually not as used. It's used more often in events and things like that. For your MCQ, this is also the time in order to kind of click and get a more detailed view of each activity. And final thing is this dashboard right here, which isn't as interesting today, but when we have a lot of participants joining in on a session, it allows you to see if there were any messages, if people interacted in the discussion space, how many activities were played, your total amount of participants. And this is also where you will be able to generate reports. So for facilitators and trainers, it's always interesting to generate meeting notes, but people usually use the Word document export to really get an overview and kind of the meeting minutes. So I would recommend this more for meetings. When you're hosting training sessions, I think that the two reports that will be interesting for you is the PDF and the Excel. Of course, exporting results in Excel format allows you to then go ahead and rework those numbers, go into them. You can create a lot more insights by kind of diving into the analysis of each result. And you have all of this that will be exported directly into an Excel format. And then once again, if you're looking to get an overview of all of the slides that were shared, if you want to share this with your participants at the end, you want to share with them the slides, the activities, and things like that, you can go ahead and generate the session in PDF format. So then all of your audience members will be leaving with the Beekast session and all of the results in the PDF format. So there you have it. I think these are some really fun tips that if you want to try them out in your training courses, I really recommend that you do. They're really fun. They're easy to set up. And the idea here, the goal for us today was to really show you all of the ways that you can create really engaging training courses that are also just efficient for you and provide as much value as possible to your learners. So if you're a trainer here today, if you're a coach, if you're a facilitator, I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, so feel free to contact us. You can also contact our support team if you want to continue the conversation or have any questions regarding your Beekast session. And thank you all for joining me today, and I'll see you very soon for an upcoming webinar. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.